Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. Christmas Day, 1610. Armed with swords, golden crosses, and blazing torches, Hungarian soldiers and Roman Catholic priests storm up a steep hill towards the imposing black spires of Csacice Castle. The fortress was once home to the notorious Black Knight of Hungary, a warrior renowned for slaughtering Turks in battle and using vicious methods to extract information from his prisoners. Now it is the residence of his widow, a dark and mysterious woman from the ruling family of Transylvania, whose bloodlines can be traced to the greatest kings and warriors of Hungary and Poland. She is a powerful enemy, but the dark rumors surrounding her lair, the mysterious reports of missing women and girls, must be investigated. Justice must be done. The soldiers bang on the door of her castle, their knocks echoing through the torch-lit halls and blood-soaked chambers of the grim palace. The door slowly creaks open. What the priests and soldiers find inside is a scene of pure horror. When asked to testify about their discoveries at trial, the lead investigator simply refused. He said that the intimate details of what he discovered in the grim chambers of Csacice Castle that evening were simply too gruesome to recall. But today, the world remembers. They have heard the stories of the sadistic torture devices, the bathtubs filled with the warm blood of slain virgins, the horrors of the Blood Countess. From her influence on the stories of vampire lore that followed, to her infamous claim as perhaps being one of history's first female serial killers, the name Elizabeth Bathory only resonates one type of emotion from those that hear it, that of dread and terror. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am here as always with my co-host, Dr. Pat Larish. Pat, thank you so much. We are here on a very spooky day. And how are things going for you? How's your Halloween?
Going okay. I've picked up a lot of trick-or-treat candy to hand out to my students and or neighborhood children. And it's getting into fall weather, so leaves are falling off the trees, at least in the Northern Hemisphere.
At least at this side of the world. Yeah, we have a very special guest today. We are joined by Tani Caesar, who has a podcast called Unhinged History. And we are already pretty unhinged at Badass of the Week, but I think we can really up our game for Halloween. And Tani, you are joining us from the Southern Hemisphere, where it is not cold and spooky.
G'day. It is hot as hell, which is pun is intended, and there's pollen everywhere and the antihistamines are out. So, not really thinking about Halloween just yet, but we'll get there when it turns nighttime, I think.
Right. And we were talking a little before the show, and you said that kind of Halloween is more of a US thing. It's not really a...
It is. Well, I mean, it's just a Northern Hemisphere thing, I think. And then it's been Americanized, and now it's sort of come over to Australia, but it's not as big of definitely not as big of a deal down under. But free lollies will get anyone going, so
that's fair enough. That's why it's catching on. You get to dress up in crazy costumes and get candy. There's worse things, right? I got my pumpkin spice latte here while we're going to talk about Vlad the Impaler.
Right. Yeah, lovely.
Nothing says torture and mutilation like nutmeg.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is why it's unhinged,
Yes. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your show for people who might not have been exposed to it yet? Why don't you kind of give us the overview of Unhinged?
Yeah. So Unhinged History is my long form content really from my TikTok. So I started TikToking a while ago now and realized that my closet history buff hobby weirdness was actually enjoyable for people to watch, you know? So that sort of took off. And then I realized that, short form just isn't enough for some of these stories. So I started the podcast Unhinged History. It's been going for not that long now, but yeah, it's been really fun. And this is probably the second, under Unhinged History, you'll be the second interview like style podcast. So I'm excited and grateful to be here.
Yeah. And so this episode will air on your show as well as on ours, and a slightly different version of it, but you can listen to them both and get all the same great content. I don't know.
Follow on all platforms and click every bell.
Yes, click all those, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below. So we are going to be talking about some pretty unhinged characters for our Halloween episode today. Pat, do you want to tell us who we're going to be talking about? Because it's pretty intense subject matter. Yeah,
it's pretty intense subject matter, and this episode will be gruesome. So, listeners, make an informed decision.
Yes,
we're going to talk about two infamous badasses: Elizabeth Bathory, known famously as the Blood Countess, and also Vlad III Tepesh, known as Vlad the Impaler, who was inspiration, at least in part, for Bram Stoker's Dracula, the vampire, who we all think of as like the famous vampire, the one who inspired the Count on Sesame Street, et cetera, et cetera.
I refer to all vampires as Draculas, just FYI. I think it's so funny. It's never not funnier to interchange Dracula for vampire.
And also not me knowing until not that long ago that Transylvania was actually a real place and not just a movie like setting for
it's weird, right? And it doesn't show up on any maps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we are in Transylvania. We are in all of these fun places. We're talking about Draculas in Transylvania. It should be
they did exist.
Yes. It is a real place, and and it's not a state in the United States next to New Jersey. It is in Eastern Europe. So, I'm from Pennsylvania, so.
I'm going to interject with a joke. I was watching this podcaster, and he was asked, "What's your favorite part of the Renaissance?" And he goes, "What? The fair or the restaurant?" Like, what? So I'm glad you clarified, because I really do think it's necessary to clarify.
Yeah, Transylvania is in Slovakia and Romania. Yeah. It's like across the border, right?
Yeah.
And it's like all Eastern Europe, it's kind of one of these places that has been in a lot of different. It was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It was owned by Hungary different times. People have fought over it for a long time. Saxons had it for a while. Like everybody's kind of fought over this place, which is how it got its reputation for being bloody. But yes, so Dracula's in Transylvania. That's the theme of this very special Halloween episode. And we are going to take a really quick break. And then when we get back, we are going to start talking about the first of these two people who really heavily influenced the Dracula myth. Tani is going to talk to us about Elizabeth Bathory. So we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. And Tani, why don't you get us started on the story of Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess?
Let's take it away. All right. Bathory. I've heard her name pronounced so many ways as Elizabeth, and then I don't have the inflection. I'm Australian. We swallow all our words. I can't, anyway. So, Lizzie.
Lizzie B.
Wow, what a lady. I think I'm going to start just with a little bit of preface to this, because she is, amongst historians, a little bit of a controversial individual. Why? Because a lot of what we know or believe we know about her is upon assumption. We'll get into the very morbid details of that, or third-party witnesses, which we'll also get into the morbid details of. And then there's a group of scholars that are like, yeah, but this guy said this, and then some people we think that maybe she just got set up because she was rich, and then that guy wanted her money, so blah, blah, blah. But then also there's a whole bunch of other stuff which at least convinces me of a lot of things that went down. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's something that we were coming across when we were researching this too, where it's like, did she get a bad rap? Maybe, but she probably also did a lot of really messed up stuff.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Did they exaggerate it
Yeah.
10% or did they exaggerate it 80%? It's hard to say for sure because that sort of thing happens.
Or to be the devil's advocate, I don't even know if I used that term right, but it felt right because whatever.
We're just going to be making those kinds of puns all episode, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's Halloween. Roll with it.
The other side of the coin is that she was a part of a huge, noble, very wealthy family. So if it got out that she did some like quirky, kinky, freaky, sadistic stuff too much, well, that would tarnish the name of the whole ass family, right? So then there's that side of it. It's like, well, how much don't we know? So it could be either or, but we'll tell the story as we have details of it. That was just my very long preface and trigger warning. Blood will be involved.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a lot.
So you're saying that depending on what, we don't know what the reality is. Maybe the reality is exaggerated a lot or a little, or maybe the reality is underreported.
Exactly.
A little or a lot. Yeah.
And based on what we do have records of, the underreporting that was done by her, she did a lot of covering up herself. We know that. So anyway, moving forward. So it's
but probably a bad person. Probably legitimately did some bad things.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of like, there have been attempts in the past over the last, years to rehab her image a little bit. I think she probably did a lot of bad stuff. And that's just me talking. But a lot of the evidence seems overwhelming that some bad stuff was happening in the torture dungeons of her creepy castle.
Torture, not really great. So.
Right.
All right. So basically, we're in 1560, Transylvania, which we've covered. That is a real place.
Yes.
And so her uncle was Stephen Bathory. Now, he was the Duke of Transylvania and mates with Vlad the Impaler. Is that right?
That's true.
Oh, yeah. Her uncle. Yeah.
They fought the Turks together.
Yeah. That is right.
So when she was a young girl, people tortured back then. They did public killings. It was a gruesome time. It was wartime as well. People were subjected to a lot of traumatizing stuff. So that's the first thing.
You never want to go back in time. You would never want to go back in history to any other time period.
No.
This is the Middle Ages.
Way.
This is torture racks and Iron Maidens and all that kind of stuff, right?
The Geneva Convention hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah, no.
And freezing. Anyway. Now, in this period, so we're talking about noble families, big names, the Bathorys, the Habsburgs, blah, blah, blah. We all know that they were all a mess. Torture was common practice in this time for nobility, for their slaves. So they were able to torture however they wished for their slaves. If they killed a slave, all they had to do was pay a fine to the family for the deceased slave. So that is kind of where Bathory got away with a lot of things for a very long time, because she just kept it to her slaves. And we'll get there, but that's something important context of the day, is that was allowed.
Yeah, they were your people. You do whatever you want with them; they're fine. Or you own them, right? They're your peasants and your slaves and your whatever. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like your property. Yeah. So basically, to give the quick chronology of her life, she was prone to epileptic seizures as a child, which is interesting, because that was contained by the family. Because remember, at this point in time, we've got the whole Catholic Protestant situation going on, and I guess epilepsy wasn't really understood, and the demons within sort of situation. So the epilepsy was like, don't tell anyone about that.
Yeah.
She would go into these fits of rage. So she probably had, something. Now, she got engaged at 11. You heard that right. Engaged at 11. Got pregnant while horse playing with a 14-year-old boy. Got pregnant at 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did the family deal with this?
Goodbye, baby.
They were unhappy.
This
is awkward.
Terrible job. And then we're going to marry you off at 15 to a noble person or whatever. I don't really know where the baby went, to be honest.
Like nobody does. That's the I'm going to keep this one under wraps, I think.
I don't know, just throwing that out there.
And her husband's a good character too. His name is I can't pronounce his name. I'm going to throw it to Pat. That's one thing on our show, is that Pat does the good pronunciations.
Ferenc Nadasdy, or Nadasdy Ferenc, if you want to do it the Hungarian way.
Good old Ferenc Nadasdy.
Right. So he's the Black Knight. He's called the Black Knight. And so
he's the Black Knight. Yeah, there we go.
That's how he's remembered by history.
Black Knight and Lizzie the Blood Licker. They're really
a match made in heaven, even at 15.
Literally. So, and just like, keep in mind, Australians use nicknames for everything. So some weird stuff's going to come out of my mouth, and it is what it is.
I love it.
So anyway, she's married off to the Black Knight, because we can't pronounce his first name. And they were literally a match made, I would argue, in the seventh layer of Dante's Inferno, violence. So at the time, the Black Knight was basically in battle a lot. It was a very gruesome time against the Ottoman Empire. And he was particularly known for his creative and sadistic torture methods. And so they basically had this weird, it's not, they obviously loved it. I feel like, I don't know the capacity of this, if they loved each other or were capable of love, but it seemed like they really loved each other, because they wrote to each other all the time. And Bathory would ask about details to do with the intricate, disgusting ways that the Black Knight tortured human beings, and then he would write back instructions and encourage her to do it to her servant girls. So she starts stabbing servant girls with needles under their fingernails when they get a stitch wrong.
Sewing needles?
Yeah, sewing needles, just you did that stitch wrong, boom, 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 that's oof. And then one time she broke the arm of a servant for tugging on her hair too hard when she was brushing it.
Tugging on Elizabeth's hair?
Yeah, so the servant was brushing her hair, and she tugged too hard, and so naturally the normal reaction is to therefore break her arm.
Oh, yeah. Totally rational.
Completely rational.
Punishment fits the crime, you know? That's justice.
So anyway,
and so just to recap here, so the Black Knight is off here fighting Turks and torturing prisoners of war, which, as Pat said, we don't have the Geneva Convention yet. And then Elizabeth is writing him letters like, "Oh, what'd you do to that?" And he's like, "Oh, dude, I put the thing under his nails." And then he talked and told me where all the enemy were. And then she goes back and she's like, "Oh, cool. The next time somebody tugs my hair, they're getting the nails they're getting that needle treatment because I got to see what happens."
So yeah, the letters, they were like, look what I did. And then he'd be like, try this. And this one letter he sent, he was like, take a servant girl, coat her in honey, leave her outside, and then put lit pieces of paper in between each toes and let her die by ants. So, the creativity was there.
I mean, that would be very high
diabolical
on the list of ways I would not want to die.
Yeah.
Me too.
Eaten by ants.
Just
that sounds awful.
But and also specifically being burnt between your toes. Like, anyway.
While you're being eaten by ants,
Yeah.
like that just seems like overkill, really.
And then the blood and the honey.
Seems like a waste of.
They were getting creative. Well, they were rich, so that's how.
Honey was probably not that easy to come by then.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so be that as it may, they compared notes on.
Definitely compared notes. They tried each other's methods. It's sort of, that they bonded, obviously. Now, as I was saying, she was torturing and killing her servant girls, and that was fine because, again, we were in this period of time. But it was when she was introduced to who I like to refer to maybe as her mentor, Anna Davolia. Davolia?
How do you spell this?
Let's just go with Anna.
Yeah. And also, I like the way that the other part of her name sounds a little bit like diabolical, kind of.
Yeah, like Davolia.
Yeah. So Anna, the diabolical.
So anyway, the mentor comes along and she's like into witchcraft and into like Satanism, apparently. There's no evidence that she mentored Bathory, but like they lived together and had similar interests, which was torturing young women. So anyway, now her servants reported that once Anna got to the castle, that's when Elizabeth started getting more and more extreme with her measures of torture and her patients that didn't really exist in the first place completely disappeared.
I mean, look, just burning your toes and getting you eaten with ants, like that's nothing. Just wait.
Yeah, things are about to heat up. Literally, heat up. So she turned her castle into, now I'm going to need help with this, Pat, because I can't say this word, Gynoeceum. Is that right?
Gynoeceum. Like the quarters for women?
Yes,
the
quarters
women's
for women.
side of the building? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the Greek thing. And so she was like, I'm going to do that. But it instead was definitely not like a safe haven quarters for women. It was like the opposite. It's like where you go to die.
Oh, so she set up like a fake like finishing school, like a fake
that's
school
what
for
is exactly
local
it.
women, noble women, and peasant women to come and be trained by a real countess on how to
100%.
do all the things that you're supposed to be doing when you are a medieval woman. And then it was
a finishing school in a different sense.
Yeah, fair. Finishing school in a different sense. I like that.
Because if you're from that was good. If you're from a noble family, you want to intermarry your daughter off to a noble family son. So they need to learn languages, which is really important at this point. Also, like how to dance properly, at balls and things, and needlework and blah, blah. So she opens the gates to the girlies, and all the noble families are like, hell yeah, like that. It's the Elizabeth Bathory, like of course we're going to send our girls to this finishing school.
Her uncle was friends with Vlad the Impaler. I mean, how can you not send her there?
Yeah,
how can you not send your
great.
daughter off to her creepy castle?
So, you know, this school set up, there's Anna there, there's Lizzie there, and rumors start like escaping because there were a lot of deaths, not just servant deaths now, but actual noble women, noble girl deaths. Now that's not allowed. You can't kill a noble girl. But she obviously got bored of killing her servants, so she started torturing the noble girls. Now, she announced to the area that there was a cholera outbreak in the castle, and that's why all these girls were dead. And so she's calling in the priests, right? And she would always have the bodies completely covered, and the priests were only allowed to look at their faces to identify them.
That preserved their modesty, I'm sure.
I mean, probably.
Yeah. Plus, and you have to prevent the outbreak, right? You have to
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the priests started chatting with each other, and they were like, this girl was supposed to be, 15, and she was the size of a 4-year-old child. I think she was starved to death, or there were clear lacerations through, there's something to suspicions. And then that rumored out. So people were talking, but the priest kind of couldn't say anything because hubby, who's back from war at this point.
Black Knight, yeah.
No, she's untouchable while he's alive. So
yeah, because he's a big war hero. He's a super violent, bloody guy too. You didn't want to cross him, especially even if you were a priest, right? This guy will mess you up.
Yeah. So we don't really know the details quite yet, but in 1604, old mate kicks the bucket.
This is the Middle Ages, right? We're talking about late 1500s, right? So this is still kind of in Eastern Europe, which is, we're talking kind of medieval, kind of Middle Ages kind of thing. And so a more than average number of people to be dying seems significant because people just drop dead all the time in 1590. It wasn't that weird for entire villages to just disappear because somebody got sick and they all died or whatever, right?
However, these were the noble women in one of the richest gals in the town's house.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
their
really
life expectancy should technically be better because they're
they should be expected to live to 30.
Slightly longer. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, hubby's dead, but she's rich. And the husband weirdly takes her kids and puts them in custody of, I think, his cousin or something. So it's
probably a good call.
I feel the husband obviously knew something. That to me is the da-na-na-na-na-na-na. The husband was I'm not leaving my kids with that bitch.
I love her. But
when you say husband, do you mean Ferenc Nadasdy, the Black Knight?
Yes, yeah. So in the will.
Oh, okay. So him, even he.
He was she's I like her, but she's actually pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah, he left the estate to Lizzie, to Bathory, but took the kids and then gave them to Matthias II. Yeah. So who I think was his cousin. Somehow they were related.
They're all related at this point. Everybody's related in 1590.
Yeah, exactly. Anywho, so now she's touchable because she's alone. A priest, brave enough, spoke up and started talking about all the things that they had seen when they were given bodies sort of at the front gate in the middle of the night, just that. And then the castle was raided by priests and the King of Hungary. So he's like, you know what? We're raiding the castle. So she takes off. And when the priests went in, they quoted that the scene they found was too horrible to recount within the castle. So
That seems
a
bad.
trial begins. Yeah, so that means really, 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 really bad.
Yeah.
Too horrible to recount. So there was 300 witness statements, okay, at this trial, and she ain't looking too good to be innocent in this situation. So she fled, and she was living in some mountainous area, and kind of
While she's not looking too good. While she's not looking too good as a defendant, her skin is looking amazing. I should say.
Yeah.
Like, oh crap! They're gonna see all my stuff. I'm gonna run. Like,
Yeah.
if you were innocent, why would you do that? I don't know. Just saying. And take a whole bunch of money with you and get in contact with her cousin, he was someone that was important, as like a backup plan. Like, can you bail me out, sort of thing.
Do you have an army that can protect me from these?
Help!
Yeah.
Help! He's like, why are you fleeing the country? Anyway, she gets brought back for this trial, and that's where all the stuff comes out. So she tortured girls, oh my gosh, in like the most, I don't even know, I'm wordless. Pat, maybe you have some words. Like, I can't express like the creativeness of it.
Yeah. Egregiousness?
Yeah.
Yeah, sadistic creativity.
These tools just, like basically what I would like call tongs, or like a wrench tong thing that would be heated and then would burn through your finger and the bone, and then your finger gets torn off.
Yikes.
I didn't know you could do that.
Like, who thinks of that?
I didn't know that was possible either.
Yeah.
Lots of how do I put this? Crucifixion-esque type style torturing.
Ooh.
Like, symbolism, Christian theme. And then like the normal stuff, like whipping, lashings, cutting people's hands off, So anyway, in the trial, I promise I'm almost done. So the biggest accusation of all was that she would bloodlet her servant girls into a bath and bathe in it to preserve her youth. Now, whilst that does feel like something she'd do, like, I just get the vibe that kind of would be possible. However, we have no proof of that. Just keep that in mind. So they go into the trial. Her servants, 5 of her servants, one of them was her wet nurse.
Oh, so the woman who breastfed Elizabeth
Yes.
when she was a baby. Oh, okay.
Sorry, no. The woman that breastfed her babies.
Ah, got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because nobility were far above doing that. And she had people to torture. She was busy.
She's got a day job. Don't have time for this.
She's got a big job to do. So 5 witnesses were all tortured into confession, which completely ruined the trial. And then the old finger clamp, and then they got buried alive. So that's why it's really hard to know, because of course they're going to confess or anyway.
Right. There's just no good guys in this time period, right? Like, that's one of the crazy things about medieval judicial system, right?
Literally.
It's like, dude, do you believe Elizabeth Bathory, or do you believe the Inquisition? Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
So that the servants all get charged with accomplices to murder and buried alive, but Bathory couldn't be charged with anything because she was noble. So she got exiled to a room and starved herself to death.
Which is hardcore.
Oh.
And that was the end of her life. Probably good. She tortured for 34 years. She got away with torturing people, and the estimates of the girls that died are between 600 and 1,000 people. There's a big gap in understanding there. So,
right, and we can't like really quantify it easily too. So.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So in Badass of the Week, we cover a lot of like war heroes and general badassitude in that way. And this is kind of a different situation of like, she's criminally insane and terrifying and scary.
She's bad.
Yes, bad person, just bad. She's bad. Unhinged, so she works perfectly for for you.
Exactly. The crossover is crossing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, like the bathing in blood thing is pretty intense. That's what she's most well known for. And that story, whether it is true or not, like does kind of feed into the vampire myth, right? Of all of the vampire stuff kind of comes from Transylvania. You know, we're going to talk about Vlad in a second, but a lot of the vampire stuff is from Transylvania, which is where she was from. And this bathing in blood thing is a thing that you'll see in a lot of vampire type settings, vampire type fiction. And so she kind of contributes to that. Hey, it's Halloween, so we're going to go with it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And vanity, you know, like if you're going to get some wrinkles, you might as well bathe in some blood, I guess.
Yes. And like you said, like she might have gotten I mean, did she get a bad rap? But probably not. Like, probably deserved all of the being walled up into a room and starving herself to death. Yeah, she probably was a very bad person. The bathing in blood thing, like you said, it doesn't show up until like, you know, the first accounts of it aren't until a little later. But
yeah,
I think, but yeah, it's like you said, it seems like it would fit. We can't prove that it happened, but we can't prove that it didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I feel like, speaking of blood, why don't we talk about Vlad the Impaler?
Okay, all right. We'll take a really quick break, and then when we come back from that, we are going to get into another psychotic homicidal lunatic. All right, so stay with us. Welcome back. We are now going to talk about Vlad the Impaler. And to tell the story of Vlad, I want to begin with an excerpt from a 15th century Hungarian pamphlet that was written by people who hated him. Here begins a very cruel, frightening story about a wild, bloodthirsty man, Prince Dracula. How he impaled people and roasted them and boiled their heads in a kettle and skinned people and hacked them to pieces like cabbage. So that's what we're about to get into here. So get ready for Vlad the Impaler. So Vlad, he's Vlad III. He's known as Tepesh. He's from a place called Wallachia, which is in present day Romania. But he was born in Transylvania.
And Tepesh, by the way, just means impaler.
Oh, really?
In Romanian.
Oh, cool. I literally never knew that. Until just now. Okay, so perfect. So he was, I guess, as a child, he was just Vlad III or Vlad of Wallachia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. His dad was Vlad II.
Right. His dad was Vlad II. Dracul, which means the dragon. And so Dracula just means son of the dragon, which is cool. Yeah. But it's not what we think about when we think about Draculas anymore. And so, but it means son of the dragon.
And he was called, or Vlad the Dad was called the Dragon because he had been inducted into this secret society of knights or something like that was known as the Order of the Dragon.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so Vlad is born in Transylvania. He has a castle that's in present day Romania. He's about 100 years earlier than Elizabeth Bathory.
So Dracula, aka Vlad III, had a pretty rough childhood. At the age of 11, he was captured by the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire and shipped off to Adrianople, modern Edirne, where he and also his brother, who I believe was known as Radu the Handsome, would spend the next 6 years growing up as prisoners of the Turkish court.
Right. And the idea here was that this would like bring the Ottoman Empire and Wallachia a little closer, right? This is the the Greyjoys sending their kid to Stark Castle, right? Like the Ottomans are kind of dominating Eastern Europe at this point. Mehmed the Conqueror is up and coming, but he's going to actually be growing up with Vlad in this castle in Adrianople. But the idea is the Ottomans are trying to move into Eastern Europe, and they're a dominant power, and they dominate Dracula and say, hey, we won't kill you if you send your kid to come live with us as a hostage. And it works out well because, on the one hand, now Vlad II is not going to cause trouble because his 2 kids are going to die, and you don't want to lose Radu the Handsome. And on the other hand,
or Vlad III.
Or Vlad III, right?
I assume.
Yes, and the son of the dragon. And on the other hand, like now we've got these 2 kids in our castle, and we can indoctrinate them into our, we can grow. They grow up with our guys, and so when your kids and our kids both become adults, they'll be buddies, and everybody will be happy and whatever. Not how it works out because.
And it's all sunshine and cupcakes.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a good idea. On paper, it's a decent plan. The problem is that Dracula didn't go along with the plan.
Yes.
He was.
What is the saying? Like, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, and no lesson plan, shall we say, survives first contact with a bunch of 11-year-olds or whatever. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. So,
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. Here we have Vlad III growing up with Mehmet the Conqueror. So Vlad the Impaler and Mehmet the Conqueror are both kind of boys at this time period growing up together. And Dracula is very mad about being a hostage here, and he causes trouble, and he gets whipped and beaten up and tortured, and all of these bad things happen to him in Turkey because he just will not play along and play nice with the other boys. He is a captive here, and he is a hostage, and he never stops trying to escape and cause trouble. And
he is not happy about it. Yeah,
he is not happy about it. And it actually works out that being here in Ottoman captivity probably was a good thing for him, because back in Wallachia, some guy named Vladislav seizes the throne from Vlad's father and pulls his face off with those iron pokers we were just talking about, and Dracula dies from that. Then the older brother of Dracula.
Yeah, he did not survive the face pulling.
Did not survive having his face pulled off with red hot pokers. No, he did not.
No.
Dracula's.
This is not some like new spa treatment. Yeah.
No.
And also, I just want to make sure the Dracula who's getting his face pulled off is Vlad the dad, Vlad II.
Yeah, right. Vlad the dad.
And I just want to make
yes, Dad the Impaler.
Has no face.
I just want to make it clear because we've got Dracula and then we've got Dracula.
Yes.
And these are 2 different dudes.
And then baby Vlad gets mad.
Right. Yeah. So we will end the confusion now, because this is the end of the story for Dad the Impaler. He's out of the picture now. He's got his face pulled off and he's dead. Dracula has an older brother who gets his eyes burned out with a red hot poker and is buried alive by this Vladislav guy. And he also dies from that. So that's the end of those guys.
That sucks.
Vlad III is now the heir to Wallachia, except that it's in the possession of a usurper at the moment. Okay, so
this is still the Vladislav guy, right?
Yes, Vladislav. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the situation. Vlad is in Adrianople with Mehmet the Conqueror and these Ottomans raising him. His father and older brother are dead, killed by a usurper who also doesn't like the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottomans say, here's a good opportunity for us to send a huge army with Vlad, the rightful heir to the throne. We will conquer Wallachia. We'll put Dracula on the throne of Wallachia where he belongs, and he will have loyalty to us because we put him there. This is a flawless plan.
We fed him breakfast every day for years.
Right, yeah.
He owes us something.
That's a decent strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In theory.
Yeah, in theory.
In theory.
Assuming that Vlad Dracula wants to play along with these... with the Ottoman Empire, this actually works out. This will work out great.
He hated his entire childhood.
Right.
Sure.
So this giant Ottoman Empire army shows up with Vlad, ostensibly leading them, and they crush the Wallachians. They destroy Vladislav. According to the story, Dracula defeats him in single combat, in the throne room. Very dramatic movie sequence here of Vlad is avenging his father and his brother with a sword in front of the throne of Wallachia, fighting the usurper in single combat. That's the story. It seems probably that's not what happened, but it's a great story, so let's go with it. That is how the movie version of this plays out.
Yeah.
So in 1456, Vlad becomes king of Wallachia, and he becomes Vlad III, and he's got the crown, and he play nice enough with the Ottomans. They go back to Adrianople, say, okay, Vlad, don't do anything crazy while we're gone. And he says, no, you can trust me. So Vlad's got some business to attend to. And Tani, let's assume that you are Vlad the Impaler here, and you have retaken the throne of your kingdom from the armies that have usurped it. What's the first order of business for you?
Revenge.
Definitely revenge, yeah. Everybody that supported that Vladislav guy, they gotta die.
Which is...
Yeah.
So you made a Game of Thrones reference, and so I'm going to continue with that. The Red Wedding theme music that will haunt every Game of Thrones diehard fan for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. Imagine that playing in the background.
Yeah.
So Vlad gets his spies to seek out every single noble person that supported Daddy getting his face ripped off. But this is all secret and underground, right? And so he then has 200 names that he happens to invite to an Easter feast as the new king, to get to know everyone. Oh, and bring your families with you. So
fun times.
He sends out these invites, and they all come to this Easter feast, and they're like, oh yes, the great king. Yeah. And then anyway.
So what happens to these guys?
The door's locked. The head of each of the families, the old eldest of each family, is taken, and in front of their families, impaled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it wasn't a feast. It was a bloodbath.
Yes.
And
yep.
Yeah, so he reigns of Castamir's all of the men responsible for this, and then enslaves the wives and children and forces them to build his castle. Forces them to move rocks and build a big castle in his honor. And works them until they just die.
Go on, girls.
Yes.
Get out into the cold.
Yes.
Build me a castle.
And here's the thing of the Impaler, right? So he becomes Vlad the Impaler after this, right? And then he gets busy with, all these people in Transylvania, all of these Saxons in Transylvania, Germanic people, Germanic people in Transylvania. They got to go. Everybody that backed Vladislav, they got to go. But one thing we should stipulate here when we're talking about being impaled is that I had always kind of assumed that this was through the abdomen, like you would put a hot dog on a skewer. Like if you were gonna like a kebab that you would grill, you put the stuff on there sideways.
Yeah, which technically is true, because that technically is impalement. However,
that's not how Vlad did it.
Yeah. So instead of like a T shape, it's more like a corn dog.
Well, it's
let's just say you putting things up people's bums.
Yeah, it went.
Let's just say it, okay? Yeah. Let's just say it.
Yeah,
I want to apologize to all of our listeners for that image.
I'm too crass. I can't hold it back.
No. Okay, if you made it this far, this is what you came for. But I still feel ooh, that's gotta hurt. And ugh. Yes.
Right. Yeah, you sat on it until the skewer came out your mouth. Yeah, that's how that worked. And that's the impalement situation for Vlad the Impaler.
Corn dogs.
Corn dogs, yeah.
Did we just ruin corn dogs?
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, so we're talking about human beings.
We're talking about actual human beings who are dead, and in a horrible way, and probably people who didn't deserve to die. So, Pat, Vlad grows up, and so does his childhood frenemy, Mehmed the Conqueror, who now becomes Mehmed the Conqueror, but he was just Mehmed the dude when Vlad knew him. Vlad is now the Impaler. Yeah. Mehmed is now the Conqueror. And so what's his deal?
Oh, whoops.
I mean, fight, yes, but we definitely, this is good. And as far as combat goes, this is an amazing battle of epithets. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Mehmed the Conqueror?
Yeah. So he's the guy who conquered Constantinople. And these two guys, that plan, which on paper would have made them besties, did not actually happen in the way that people hoped it would. They hated each other's guts. And when Dracula, aka Vlad III, aka Vlad the Impaler, seized control of the throne of Wallachia,
oh man, is it pronounced Wallachia? Have I been saying Wallachia the whole time?
It's pronounced however. Go follow your heart, Ben.
Follow your heart.
Yeah. So when Dracula, our guy, Vlad III,
I still like my mind is blown from Wallachia. Of course, the W is a V because it's Eastern Europe, but I would have never put that together. And all right.
Something that I just have to say, because oh my god, imagine getting the nickname the Impaler versus the Conqueror. Like, I'd be pissed. Like, if I was Vlad the Impaler and I'm up against a guy, the Conqueror, like, I don't know.
Which one do you like better?
Saying,
I'm curious.
The Conqueror. I want to be the Conqueror.
Yeah, I mean, if he had impaled fewer people, he might have been the Conqueror, I guess.
Maybe.
Yeah.
When you impale 300 people in front of their families, like, that's going to stick, I think. Stick, I don't know if that's the right word.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Vlad takes over, and Mehmed takes over in the Ottoman Empire. They're both like pretty young. They're both in their 20s, right? So they're both kind of these young guys that are, have hated each other, have 10 years of fighting, literally wrestling each other. And in the old days, the Wallachians have historically paid money to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire to not destroy them. And this is the thing that is done in a lot of Eastern Europe. Please don't the conqueror us. Here's some money. And Vlad takes over and he's like, go to hell. I'm not doing this. And Mehmed's like, dude, what's your problem? And then Vlad responds by launching this huge campaign along the Danube River in 1461, just burning everything, like slaughtering Turkish soldiers and civilians and impaling people and doing all of this, and just annihilating all of the Turkish settlements and soldiers in what he believes is Wallachia.
Naturally.
Right. So
that place.
Mehmed sends two guys to Vlad's court to be like, dude, what is your problem? And Vlad responds.
So these are ambassadors.
Ambassadors, right? Diplomats. And they arrive in Vlad's court and they're like, what is wrong with you? And Vlad's like, well, you have to take your turban off in my court. You have to take your headgear off because that's respectful to me. And they don't do that. So he has their headgear nailed to their head with a big, think like a railroad spike, and they die. Mehmed has heard enough from Vlad the Impaler, and he's just gonna do the thing. He's gonna do the conqueror thing, and he's just gonna crush Wallachia and put somebody else on the throne. Like, all right, the Vlad experiment is a failure. We're just gonna stomp this guy and find somebody else. Maybe that Radu the handsome guy. he seems nice.
Oh yeah, Vlad the Impaler's younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the way more chill younger brother that actually really liked growing up in that empire and was friends with them and stuff. Maybe we should choose him. I don't know. Yeah,
and so talk about talk about epithets, right? Like you would have wished you'd had to conquer. I was like, oh, I'm not the handsome one. What's this all about? I'm the other one.
Can you imagine the sibling rivalry?
I'm the Impaler. Okay, so the Turks send 100,000 guys, 100,000 man strong army with Radu the Handsome at the head of it.
Hold on. Wait. Did you say 100,000?
100,000 soldiers.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Okay.
It's close to the population of Wallachia, right? Vlad can muster 20,000 tops, right? But in reality,
yes, like 1/5 of that.
right. And that was not like a sustainable number for him, because he and a lot of these guys were untrained peasants with spears and stuff, right? Like the Ottoman Empire is a professional army. They are serious. They're not to be messed with.
Yeah.
And the 20,000 guys not only includes these peasants and stuff, but it includes some of Vlad has to call in help from his friends, including our good friend Stephen Bathory, uncle of Elizabeth Bathory.
Elizabeth's uncle.
Yes.
And here,
Small world.
funny how all the psychos are linked.
Birds of a feather, right? And so
They're on the same group chat.
Okay, so huge army coming. Vlad's trying to muster whatever he can. He's not going to fight them. He's not going to be able to defeat them on the battlefield. He's got to come up with some other strategies here. And so one of the things he decides he's going to do is he gets a pretty big group of guys, and he decides he's going to infiltrate the Ottoman camp. So the Ottoman Empire has shown up with their huge army. They're all set up in these big camps. And turns out, Vlad can speak fluent Turkish because he lived there and was raised there, and he knows the customs and he knows how to speak it, and he knows what the dress is and what the uniforms are and all this stuff. So he takes a group of guys and he sneaks into the Turkish camp, and then he starts setting everything on fire and like causing all this havoc and trying to create this big ruckus to, it doesn't work. He was going to try to kill Mehmed, just try to sneak in and kill the Sultan. It doesn't work out. He does cause plenty of havoc, loses a bunch of his guys, has to escape. And now it's like, all right, this little last ditch effort, it didn't work. So now the Ottoman Empire is coming for Castle Dracula, and it's looking bad. But he's got one more trick up his sleeve, and it's bad. It's bad. I mean, look, the impaling thing has worked for him so far, so
why reinvent the wheel, Dracula? Why?
Yes, absolutely. So Mehmed and his huge army are approaching Castle Dracula, and what they see is just rows of impaled people everywhere, just rows and rows of spikes with impaled prisoners of war, Turks mostly on them. Probably those 300 people he'd impaled before are still out there. And he has this like hellscape forest of the impaled outside of his castle.
The Forest of the Impaled.
Forest of the Impaled.
That's the name.
That is the name.
That's what the Turks refer to it as. 20,000 people is the estimate.
Could you imagine the smell?
Ugh.
20,000 people is like a sports stadium, like a full sporting stadium, like a football stadium. Ugh. Whether you want that to be American or Australian football, like either way, like it's a football stadium of dead people on sticks, right?
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
that would just be, that's horrific. But anyway, continuing. It's
horrific, and the Turks, like, I mean, that's the Turks are extremely religious people, and they see this and they're like, I'm out of here. Right? I don't want any part of this.
Even if you're not religious.
Well, this is like demonic stuff, right? Like this is some Satan, like devil stuff, right? This is where a lot of this Dracula myth comes from. Is this guy was a pretty dark person and did a lot of really horrible things.
Yeah.
And they see this and they're like, this is demon stuff. I'm out, right?
Well, yeah, and there's that cultural and religious aspect too. Like that would have just like obviously seeing something like that is horrifying, but then like you said, like,
but as a devout Muslim, like you don't go to heaven until you are buried, right? Like,
yes,
and these guys aren't getting buried anytime soon.
A whole bunch of other customs that I'm not even aware of that probably bad news, and nobody wanted a part of it, and they left. They went back home, and that was the end of it.
I don't blame them.
So Vlad wins this war, even though he has no business winning this war. And to this day, he is like a hero in Romania because he saved them from the Turks. And maybe like being impaled is a fate that's not as bad as being ruled by the Turks, but I don't know. He's a hero in Romania and they love him. Like he's not a creepy figure there. Yeah. He is a cultural hero in Romania because of what he did to like defend the country against the Turks.
Isn't that interesting?
Right?
That's so interesting.
That's what we talked about with Bathory, where like, you know, how much of this is exaggerated, how much of this was propaganda stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe it was only 100 guys and they were already, you know, like, and he set it up in a way that, you know, the story is that it was 20,000 in
I feel like that's a really interesting difference between the two, because like she was just being a sadistic serial killer, even though the term wasn't that at the time, obviously. But like, this was a leader who did that and then essentially won a war without. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
Tani, I can see you doing air quotes, like around won a war, like quote unquote,
like
won a war.
By just scaring the absolute shit out of everyone.
Yep. He defended his country in the only way that he could, right? And it's really an interesting take on him. And the Romanians will tell you he gets a little bit of a bad rap. Crime was actually really low while he was in charge, if you can believe that.
I'm sure it was. You probably wouldn't need police. When
the story goes that there was a crown, like this golden crown, and he put it on a pedestal in a public park, and it was like gold with jewels and stuff on it. And
oh my goodness!
And it never was stolen. It was stolen the day after he died. But for his entire life, nobody took that crown, even though it was priceless and it was in this public park.
It's so funny how history repeats itself, because like as you said that, I'm thinking of like the Spartan Agoge, I hope I pronounced that right, where they encouraged kids to like go and steal something they weren't allowed to, and like I don't know, it's just interesting. Like we just repeat.
Yes.
I really hope that the impaled forest never repeats, though. That's something that would be terrifying.
It's no good, right? It's no good. That's why this guy is remembered as that's why Dracula and Bathory have conjure the images that they do today amongst us, is that this is bad people doing bad stuff and that scared everybody around them. But anyway, I mean, the Turks eventually get sick of Vlad's shit and they kill him in 1476. He dies in battle. They cut his head off. They nail it to the city gate in Adrianople, which is where he grew up, or with the Turks, like in Turkey. They bring it back. Which Adrianople is the capital at this point, where Mehmed's palace is, his main palace. He's in the process of moving everything to Constantinople, which he has just conquered, which he is also in the process of renaming Istanbul and all of that. But in 1476, Adrianople is the main city in the Ottoman Empire, and they nail his head to the city gates so that. And the story is that like it's so that Turks can go and look and be like, okay, he is really dead.
He's actually dead.
He's gone and he's dead. It's not like this isn't like the Forest of the Impaled where you're trying to scare people. It's like, look, you can go see him. You go here and he's here. We got him. It's the real him. He's dead.
This specific guy. Yeah.
That shows maybe what a spiritual impact as well that possibly had. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if they needed to see that he really was dead, just ease their minds, right? He's not hiding under your bed. He's not in the closet somewhere waiting to jump out at you. Stick a kebab skewer up your ass. He was a kind of creepy looking dude in general. Oh, yeah. Maybe a little bit off with the eye proportions or whatever, but like... Yeah, big black mustache, big black beard. He wore a lot of really cool hats. Every time you see him, he's wearing some really unique and cool looking hat. It reminds me of like Napoleon or something. Yeah, it's like that. He's very distinctive when you see a picture of him. It's very distinctive that this is him. You're never gonna confuse him with somebody else. And they paint him very dark, always dark colors. So apparently a piece of research came out recently. It was published in the Journal of Analytical Chemistry recently. The title of the article is Count Dracula Resurrected: Proteomic Analysis of Vlad III, the Impaler's Documents by EVA Technology and Mass Spectrometry. What these chemists did is they took some documents that had been signed by Vlad III and somehow managed to analyze stuff. Apparently, you leave peptides and stuff on the paper, whatever.
And they show that he probably suffered from inflammatory processes of the respiratory tract and or of the skin. I'm reading from the abstract of the article. And then they think that it's possible that the data they're getting may indicate that he may have suffered from a pathological condition called hemolacria, which is a condition in which you shed tears mixed with blood.
Whoa.
Wow.
So he cried tears of blood. That's the lead, right? That's the drama. That's the clickbait. That's the clickbait title.
I buried the lead. Yeah.
Vlad Dracula may have actually cried tears of blood when his father was slain. When he got news that his dad and his brother were dead, cried tears of blood and led an army to avenge them.
That's nuts.
That's nuts. Yeah.
I cannot speak to the science behind it. The article is out there. You know, it's not behind a paywall or anything. But I guess the takeaway is that Vlad III is still gripping our imaginations.
Yes.
Yeah, well, when you cry blood, no wonder the Turks needed to see that he was actually dead, because I'm probably going to have nightmares about this now.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Oh man!
Wow.
All right. Well, happy Halloween, guys. And Tani, thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome. I want this to be a 4.5 hour episode, but we should probably call it at this point.
We definitely should, because we could talk for probably like 3 days straight.
I agree. Where can people find more of your stuff?
You can find me on literally every platform. I'm Tani, Tani Caesar, Caesar. People always spell it wrong. On TikTok, on Instagram, all the things. And then my podcast is Unhinged History.
Awesome.
And vice versa.
Yes. So we are on... the show's called Badass of the Week. We are at Badass of the Week on Twitter and Instagram. And although I'm very bad about updating social media stuff, so we'll see. But yes, that's where we're at. And all right, well, thank you so much for talking with us. This was really, really fun. I had a great time.
This was fun. And I actually should. This was great.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
right, now I'm gonna go watch Twilight and sip my pumpkin spice latte. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you soon.
Stay spooky.
Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are Andrew Jacobs, me, Pat Larish, and my co-host, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and Ben. Story editing is by Ian Jacobs, Brandon Phibbs. Mixing and music and sound design is by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeart. Badass of the Week is based on the website badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions, ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like the podcast, subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and your enemies if you want, as we'll be back next week with another one. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.